Yeah, we used to hang out a lot. That was kids together. I've got a lot to cover because I innocently put up here the last years of Anglo-Saxon England, and thank goodness Carol's here because I don't ever want you to miss any Alfred time or his family, or think that just because the English are going out today that it is any reason not to appreciate them, even though Billy and his people are now coming in, and I'm quite happy about that because I know French and not Old English, so that's kind of the prejudice there. And of course, our beloved Latin. Come right on in. Thank you. Ethelred the Unready. Everybody remembers him from school. Ethelred the Unready. Great-grandson of Alfred. And I'm sure, thank goodness, Alfred was gone at the age of 50, so he would not see this particular progeny at a reunion, because I'm sure he would have been quite unhappy. We say unready, but as many of you will know, it was long ago determined that that is ill-counseled, not unready. It's just come down that way, and it's almost as if, I guess, people have just given up, so we all just say Ethelred the Unready and let it go at that. When he became king, he died in 1016, he would have been, as I like to say, earnest and incompetent, and that's sad, because you know how they say, I'm sure they wouldn't say it about any of us, but you have heard say, they meant well. Yeah, you don't want that in your resume. Or they meant well. But he really did. Nice family, love the Lord. Nothing, you know, all the nice things you want to say. He just couldn't hack it in the vernacular. So it was not a good time for him to be king, because in addition to issues with the, I guess we can begin to say, Anglo-Danish nobility, population, they are beginning to settle. We have as well to deal with new invasions. And you think, again? They get the word, how great it is down there. I mean, it's the Florida of its day, you know. Come to England, the great weather, you know. And you say, great weather? Compared to Scandinavia, I dare say, this was Dade County. Yeah, this is quite nice. So, Danes were returning, and again, poor Ethelred simply was ill prepared to deal with this threat to the kingdom. Note there that presumably the Danish forces were supported by the local populace. That is a summation, because I do not think this Danish population had been anglicized, although one would assume they had been Christianized. But at the same time, the Danes themselves had been Christianized, so that really is no longer a major issue. Of course, you will understand when I say Christianized, I don't necessarily mean that each one practices piety, but that they more or less accept Christianity, more or less. The king is one of the very dashing figures in Danish and early English history, King Sweyn. he would have both Danish and Norwegian contacts, and one supposes that he thought with the support of his own people and those of England, he would create a kind of Scandinavian monarchy that would now include England as well as Denmark and possibly Norway as well. Unfortunately, he did not live long enough to carry it out. Now, your first tree of the day. There will be others to follow, believe me. Lots of trees for you. But this is just a simple English kings, and it takes it all the way to the end. Finis, 1042. Now, I know somebody will say, but what about Harold? Oh, I'll have more to say about him. Harold the perjurer. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, for all intents and purposes, legitimate kings. Edward the Confessor, end of the line. But you'll see our fellow Ethelred the Redeless, and that date is more or less the time of his accession, 979. Okay. King Sweyn died, and he would be succeeded by arguably one of England's greatest rulers. It has been said this man, Canute, and I do like my vowels, so I'm going to use the vowel form of the name. King Canute was the first to rule a united England, which is kind of interesting to me that he had those kinds of skills. He was the son and vice commander for King Sweyn, and when his father died, I believe in 1014, shortly after they got there, then Canute took over the operation and ruled for years afterwards. Ethelred got out of town. We'll find out more about him, but here come our friends across the channel. This is the connection. The wife of Ethelred was, in fact, a Norman. And as a result, they returned to Normandy. I'm not sure that her family was exactly happy to have him. You know, you love guests, long weekend maybe, but as a permanent exile, you say, but who's going to pay for all of this, right? But anyway, they're living in Normandy, Ethelred, while Canute becomes a celebrated monarch, and you can just imagine, this is probably hurtful to poor Ethelred, but he's over in Normandy and everybody's going, wow, he's doing a great job, you know, everybody's just crazy about him, you know, that Dane, he really knows how to, that kind of thing. So one assumes that the idea of being replaced by popular and successful monarch, oh, there he is. That's a kind of build-up in case you didn't already get the sense. He was a kind of international celebrity. He actually went to Rome and met the Pope. He went to the coronation of the Holy Roman Emperor. And as you can see, he was young, attractive. He had a lot going for him, in other words. Now, like many people of today, he was also big on the commuting. I just, you know, I never would have cared for that myself. But, you know, if you're ruler of England, Denmark, and even Norway at times, you know, you've got things going on in England, and you say, oh my gosh, next week I've got to get to Oslo. I mean, I've got a big appointment. I'm meeting with some Norwegians, and we got a big campaign plan. You know, it's like very hectic. Okay, very hectic to be a ruler of 3 different kingdoms. So you understand he wasn't always there. He was a part-time ruler, but he seems to have had the confidence of the nobility. And you might say, well, they're not very English. I mean, gosh, don't they realize they're supporting a Dane? Well, the problem there is to understand what they gave up. Not much. In Ethelred. And so you think, gosh, I bet they miss Ethelred. No, they don't. They're fine. Thank you very much. He's in Normandy, and wish him all the best. But they seem to have been, the English nobility seem to have been happy with a Danish ruler, which I think is very interesting. And he is certainly, he's Christian, he's part of the, as we would say today, international community, knows the Pope personally, gets an invitation to the coronation of the emperor. I mean, so he's got a lot of clout, as one might say. Unfortunately, he lived not as long, but when Ethelred died, he decided to marry her. And you say, well, why? Well, I could say they just met each other and it was love at first sight. I could say that. Let's just say that it was a very good move politically, and she was very keen on the connection. I mean, after Ethelred, round 2 of marriage has got to be better, right? So, I mean, you can't. And again, what I find interesting is the connection now between Denmark, England, and Normandy. Now, she has children by Ethelred, but we'll wait on that because she will also have children by King Canute. And that son of hers named Edward is going to be important to our story. The government of King Canute is led by the earls or jarls, and he will have these housecarls or bodyguards which supplement the Anglo-Saxon system of the government and the military. In other words, he will have the traditional fyrd, and he'll also have the Witan advising him. All of that will remain in place, and he will just add these Danish components to his system of governing and of maintaining his military force. He's very skillful that way. And he will appoint English to many of these jobs. You say, collaborators? Yes, they're collaborating. I mean, you go with where the power's flowing, don't you? So these English people that we're going to meet shortly will say, we're on the Danish team, boss. You know, we love you Danes. You're great people. We're all in this together. And you say, wow, that would be kind of costly in different times. Not as long as you're on the winning team. You'll be just fine. And so Canute had a way, and he did seem to have this equal support between English and Danes. And it worked very well because, remember, he's absentee quite a bit. So you don't want those English playing, you know, while the big Danish cat's away, right? The earls, and they will be very important, are almost, and we all have to have them, they're almost like satraps in the Persian Empire, or those kinds of major figures. They have lots of authority in their areas. There are 3 or 4 of the earls who are so powerful that a man less than Canute might have had problems for them, because, you know, they're so in charge. And they don't have to answer to him. It's not like, you know, nowadays folks picking up cell phones every whip stitch and saying, you doing this, you doing that. You better watch out, I'm going to come get you. You know, I mean, the man's in Copenhagen, for goodness sakes. You can get lots done back in England before he can take the next boat from Copenhagen to Southampton. Let's face it. So if you were power mad, a potential megalomaniac, you know, you could just say, sure, everything's going great. But of course, you're building all these signs and saying, me for Earl, or that kind of thing, because you don't want Canute to interfere in your authority. So, you know, you had to be careful to make sure these people are trustworthy. And they seem, but again, I just feel like he possessed, on the part of both English and Danes, a great deal of confidence. He died in 1035, quite prematurely, and he had 2 sons, and this is kind of ugly to call him just worthless, but, you know, I guess you could say something nice. I'm sure they said something nice in the Danish papers or something, and said, you know, like he meant well, or he had a lot of good characters, his mother loved him, or something. But the last one, in fact, in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, his name was Hardicanute, which I thought interesting, and it said that he died. And we all need to remind our young friends in college of this. He died of a drunken convulsion, and I'm thinking, oh, that wouldn't be a good way to go. But, of course, in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, you know why it happened. The Lord made it happen, because Hardicanute was not a good ruler, and so he said, that's the last cocktail you'll have, buddy. So that's the end of those 2. So neither one is worthy of their father, and it's kind of interesting that the second of them was Emma's son by Canute, and then he died, if you get my drift, and now she's got one of her sons by Ethelred the Unready, and she says, okay, now it's your turn. Your brothers are all dead, so now you can be king. So Emma's a fascinating character, again, an example. Somebody who in another time, perhaps modern times, would have enjoyed power on her own, but in this case, she's always operating within the confines of sister, wife, mother, whatever it is. That's how Edward the Confessor became king. His brothers died. What was he doing all this time? Well, we really don't know. Much of the time he was in Normandy with his friends. I don't think he was out trying to get a job or, you know, anything, or taking old English lessons. I don't think anything like that. Because, I mean, we talk about masochism, yeah. I don't think he was worried about that, because even if he could speak a little English, it was with a heavy accent. He became, tree number 2. There we go. Edward the Confessor was 36 years old when he became king of England. So he was hardly a baby. He was a bachelor. He was a French speaker, thanks to his Norman background. And in most respects, people didn't know what to expect because he just hadn't been around that much. But he was a member of Ethelred's family. I think the Witan had decided that Canute's 2 sons had not lived up, and they thought, well, what choices do we have? So it appears that the population was willing to give him a try, and he was, as you can see, from 1042 to 1066, the titular ruler. I say titular because he was not a strong person, and as a result, he was pretty much overrun. As a matter of fact, let's look at his wife. Her name was Edith, and to me, this is another one of those marriages that probably was engineered by parents. Edith's father was an earl. He was English, but he'd been part of Canute's entourage, and he's like any of these major patriarchs. He's using marriage to more or less keep the controls. And so, I guess he calls in Edith and say, "Oh, baby, I've got somebody great for you." This is sort of like RoyalMatch.com. And she says, "Oh, gee, Daddy, who is this?" She says, "Ooh la la, he's French." Well, kind of French. So Edward, who is known to the church as the confessor, because he's come down in history as saintly, although I think a lot of them wish you could take back sainthood, because he really is, well, let's just say there's not much evidence for a canonization process, but I guess it's like every kingdom needs one, so he got one of the coveted saintly awards, and so on we go. Edith is married to him, and of course she is her father's daughter. What am I suggesting? An agent. Yes. She is the Earl's agent. You know, back then they couldn't tape things or record things, so it's like they're together, and she says, "I think such and such. Would you say that again, baby? I want to get that. I want to be able to remember that." Yeah, and then she could whisk it off to Daddy. So Edith was definitely working for her father. Interestingly, they had no children, so it must be celibacy. Aha! More evidence for sainthood. Well, maybe so, maybe not. Nobody will ever know. But he is king, as you can see, a long time. I guess there was nobody ready to overthrow him because, more or less, he allowed the power to be used by others as long as they didn't interfere with him. So, Edward the Confessor, during all of those years, and we'll come back to this tree shortly, but here he is in one of the manuscripts, illuminated manuscripts, and we know, I call it a drinking accident. That's a nice way. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle says convulsions, but we'll let it go. The curse of the Lord on a would-be pagan. So this is Edward the Confessor then, a man best known to us probably for his aesthetic interests, rather than any significant accomplishments as ruler. The Earl of Wessex, Godwin, was in fact more or less in charge of the government, and he had his daughter in place to ensure that Edward would do a lot of praying and cooperating, and things could get done. While his language skills in English may have been limited, we assume that, gosh, wouldn't you think Godwin was definitely a polyglot. I guess he had some English, some French, some Danish. Could you imagine to be able to get along in those times? I don't think there's any kind of policy, English only, in this country. I mean, it's got lots of people and lots of languages, so it's far from uniform, particularly if you're in the ruling class. So all of this is to say that in this time, I guess they all are, of great change, we are finding that Edward is more or less titular ruler. Now he has, as many rulers will, a coterie of favorites that he imports from Normandy. So that's probably a problem, I guess. You know, if you're a marriage counselor, I mean, he's running around with his Normans, but I don't think it bothers her. She said, I'm going to go talk to Daddy, and I'll see you for supper. You know, that kind of thing. And you say, oh, baby, don't you want me to go with you? No, that's okay. You just keep hanging out with your Normans. Au revoir. Or however you people say it. You know, that kind of thing. Godwin's sons, and there were several of them, were all earls themselves. Now you talk about the godfather and all of the little godfather, would-be godfather, waiting for power. That's Earl Godwin's sons. And they were, as you can see, like Dad in the sense that they were pretty fierce, and they were part, as we might say, the power structure of the time. And of course, as long as the father was around, they were submissive to him. But that's still to say that as earls, under a king like Edward the Confessor, they had power, lots of it. For example, if you were Earl of Northumbria, now that's a long way from Wessex. We're talking sheep country. We're talking about not many humans, but lots of sheep. And way up there, and you say, well, I think that's so far away, and yeah, but that means you're going to have lots of power, aren't you? Because nobody's going to be up there. You know, like Edward's going to rush up there and interrupt prayer services. I've got to make a quick trip to Northumbria. No, I mean, that would be a pretty far piece. So I think many of these earls who were, again, sons of Godwin, exercised great power, you know, waiting for the old man to kick off, frankly. That's just the way it is. Now, there will be problems. Here comes the big problem in the 1050s. Remember, he becomes king in 1042, so we have a nice 8-year honeymoon period, you might say, and Edward is submissive and quiet, and then he begins to act up, sort of kick up his heels and say, I'm king, I want to do what I want to do. And apparently an Archbishop of Canterbury died, and so Edward decided one of his buddies, a Norman bishop, should get the big plum job. And you say, well, were there interviews? Did they go over CVs? No. Robert here of Umiash actually was one of the cronies. So this is nothing more than personal patronage, if you want to call it that way. And of course, given the resources of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Earl Godwin said, Your Majesty, my son-in-law, my dear son-in-law, I love you so much. You know, are you sure this is a good idea? He said, oui. Get it, thank you. Yeah, just had that 2 second, but you were right with me. So, he really snapped Edward the Confessor. So he had a little tantrum, when people don't act right. So this is the truth. He basically said, all of you out. And of course Edith said, oh baby, I love you so much. You just go to a convent, Missy, and you just pray, because you and your daddy are in big trouble. And so he's acting all mean, but it doesn't last. The very next year, the Godwins will be back in power. Edith is out of the convent. It's been real, sisters, but I'll be sure and leave you something in my will. You're great gals. But I'm ready to be queen again. And you say, how does he do it? How does Earl Godwin? I think sheer force. The military, his son's military forces. I think Edward is just overwhelmed. And it works beautifully. Because by 1052, Edward is going to be in the position of passivity, more or less saying, okay. And for the next, 14 years, he'll remain in the same state. If you all think it's a good idea, then I think it's a good idea too. That's all the way, folks, till 1066. That he will be a more or less passive ruler, with the family of Earl Godwin, who will die in a few years, basically in charge, now running the government. Sir?
Dr. Kickladder, I was thinking about earlier, you had a slide up about 3 or 4 back, and it said his half-brother called him back.
He did.
Do you know why he called him back?
He called him back because he had no heirs of his own. And so it was assumed that Edward would be king, because there's nobody, it's like, Edward had an older brother. I'm going to leave him out. Because he was already dead, poor thing. So he called the martyr, but... So yeah, he had a lot of potential, but more or less Edward was there because they understood he was going to be heir. Is
that makes sense.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure he didn't know he was going to go into a drunken stupor.
No, oh, conspiracy. No, poor little Edward. I just don't think. Yeah, there's no reason to doubt the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle on that issue. I mean, the man. I think the old liver was, he hadn't been good to that liver, so that was the poor Hardicanute was out of there. So, off to purgatory for him. So, meanwhile, so much for Robert and that nice job. No pension for Robert as Archbishop. He'd had some years as Archbishop of Canterbury, but as far as the Earl's regime was concerned, he was persona non grata. So, I believe if you go through an official list of Archbishops of Canterbury, he'll be listed. But you'll understand that, they come and they go. I don't think you're supposed to retire like that, but unceremoniously deposed and shipped back to Normandy. But that's what happened to poor Robert. And the Bishop of Winchester now became Archbishop. Why this man who's called Stigand? The best reason to say that he became Archbishop was not qualification, although he was Bishop of Winchester, which is no mean position on its own. But he became Archbishop of Canterbury because he was close to the Godwins. Do you say, yes, man? I do. He simply is obedient. And he will direct the resources now of Winchester and Canterbury for the interests of the family. And you say, isn't that, they call it pluralism? Sounds like you've got a disease, doesn't it? But these pluralists, that's not uncommon for this particular vice to be going on, because, you know, you've got Winchester and Canterbury. It brings a lot of prosperity. And you think, oh, you can use it for the sick. And then, no, I can use it for me. And so these people did very nicely. Stiggon was very comfortable, you can be assured. But he was a stooge nonetheless. So he is not, that's not somebody, you know, Canterbury's greatest hits. He would never make the list. This is the last of the Anglo-Saxon archbishops, sadly. If you're ever in Normandy and you want to see something that's really beautiful, check out the ruins of this abbey, because it reminds me of what they describe that Edward would now do in his later years. Of course, we don't know, because Westminster Abbey would be so completely redone in the 13th century. But way back in Edward the Confessor's time, he was involved in the development of Westminster Abbey. He did it in a Romanesque style like you see here, and I just thought that was interesting to show you so that you would be aware of the particular styling. Obviously, by the 13th century, they're going to be doing it in the more elaborate Gothic style that we are all accustomed to. How much does it cost to get in there now? It's a whole lot of money. Who's the last? Somebody been there recently? Because the last time I was just flabbergasted, but because they do well. They do well, because there are no freebies. But anyway, those are the ruins, because the monasteries went out of business in France during the Revolution back in the 18th century. But it is a beautiful ruin nonetheless. But that's what he did now. And you know, he'd come home with all of his plans and his blueprints and say, Edith, honey, look at all this. And she, oh, that's nice. Daddy says he loves it too. You know, that kind of thing. So they kept him going until the mid-1060s when his health failed. So that's important to bear in mind as we go forward. Now, it's time to introduce Harold Godwinson. Number one son, with all the characteristics that his father lacked. And he was supposed to be affable, handsome, charming. In other words, he had so much going for him. And as you will know, his father died pretty much after they retook control of the government, a year later maybe. And as a result, this individual, Harold Godwinson, would now take control of the government. You say, well, what did the brothers think? Not a lot. I don't think it was exactly a big party. Oh, big brother, we're so proud. As usual in these situations, at least in history, they seem to have been jealous, and they did not want to submit to him, even though the Witton will say, as far as we're concerned, you have rights, and you will be the Earl of Wessex now, and we just want you to continue in your father's tradition, that sort of thing. So he had a lot of power, and meanwhile, remember, he is the king's brother-in-law. And so, of course, his idea is, oh, I know, I'm upset too about Dad, but I want you to know that I'm here for you, Your Majesty. You know, and you could just imagine, sis, what did he say last night? You know, that kind of thing. Oh yeah, they've got this thing under control, no doubt about it. And that is pretty much the way the situation would be. Now, you might be wondering at this point what happened to the Danes and the Norse. That is a sad story. If you want England to be part of a Scandinavian empire, that connection, well, it obviously is going to have a great impact, because we think of all the Danes who had settled there and left themselves through certain words in our language, and in other ways must have affected the future of medieval England. But the fact is, the course of English history was going to go towards the west and not the north. So, in 1066, that famous year, Edward's health began to fail. And you can imagine, lots of people were interested in the failure of his health. You will remember, I hope, that he had no children. So, everybody's going to say, I think I should be king. There were going to be issues, even though Harold quickly picked up the authority and said, you know, he was my brother-in-law. We were tight. I was so close to him. I called him Eddie. I mean, we were just that way. And basically, and of course, Queen Mom, remember, is after all sis. And she's saying, oh yes, he said that to me every night. He was so anxious for my brother to be king. So yeah, they've got this going. They got this whole tale going that Harold was the legitimate successor. And as I indicate here, there's no reason to doubt that he had English support. The Witan, according to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, endorsed his succession as king. And of course, he will be consecrated by Stigand. I mean, it was all going to be just the way he wanted. So that's Harold, King Harold, as we say. But there was another coming all the way from the north. And you'll note the spelling variation of the Harolds. I find that very interesting. In fact, I don't know before I knew about him if I even knew about different spelling variations. But this is Harald Hardrada, a Norwegian king who had claims to the throne because his father had been close to King Sweyn Canut's father. I will spare you from the details, but just to note to you that he had claims. He was a Viking at heart. You'll notice they actually call him the last Viking, which I think is kind of interesting. He'd had quite a military resume, I guess you'd say. He'd actually been out east to the Byzantine world and fought out there. So he was used to it, and he wanted to be English king. And so there was no question they had this northern threat. He let it be known he was coming for what he believed was his by right. Boy, yeah, doesn't he look mean? Ooh, I wouldn't want to meet him. Hey, Harold, how are things in Oslo? You know, they're such nice people. It's just, but yeah, just wouldn't mess with him. I don't think that he's a guy who's prepared for compromise. or an individual said, you're right, I don't think I should be king. Let me just stay in Norway and mind my own business. No, he is ready to come and try to take it up. But it's now time for your 5 minutes. So, have we got all our time? Okay. All right. We left off with Harold Hardrada, who is one of our contestants. Actually, when we think about Harold, he might have seemed like, what's there not to like? He's English, he comes with great experience, he was an in-law of the previous king. However, in that year of 1066, there are some significant elements, including this interesting Norwegian who has his own set of credentials to make the claim of England. But there is also a Norman. And thank you, Queen Emma, because she is the one who introduces this factor. Remember, in effect, William the Conqueror has no legitimate blood claim to the English throne. He is merely a cousin to Queen Emma. So we bear that in mind when we first take up the matter of William. Before he was conqueror, he was known as the bastard because he was. It is unusual for rulers to become kings when they are illegitimately born, but I guess the success of your army helps you in these situations, and nobody's going to bring up the B word anymore. I think that's when we call him the conqueror after that. And he was a nasty piece of work, so I would think he said, oh shucks, that's what they call me back home. I know you could make that slip. I don't think that. I think that would have been very troublesome. So he's known, we'll just go on and call him William the Conqueror. Normandy, as many of you well know, is a very beautiful part of France, and Normandy was acquired by the Norse. As a result, some of you will remember from last year of the collapse of the Western Carolingians, Charlemagne's descendants. In this case, the ruler of that territory had the name Charles the Simple, which is not a very nice title, but he was, and the territory was falling quickly. He was a great-grandson of Charlemagne. And Charles the Simple ruled over all this territory, and a fellow from up north, Norse, named Rollo, came to the French court, and Charles the Simple said, you know, I've heard a lot about you. You Vikings, you really do like to loot and pillage. They said, we really do. And this is a great area to do it in. He said, I tell you what, how would you like to be one of my special deputies? I'd love for you to have this territory out west, and I'll make you one of my dukes, and I have a nice daughter, and she's really excited about meeting you too. not, but that's what they were told. The story goes then that he would marry Charles' daughter and would become the first Duke of Normandy. That's back in the 10th century. Starting the idea then of these Norsemen ruling in what we know as the Norman territory. A rather shadowy beginning to a part of medieval Europe that is considered one of the greatest and most important of all areas. Because in addition to their conquests of England, another branch of the family will conquer Sicily and make the Sicilian kingdom, like that of England, another hotbed of medieval intellectual and ecclesiastical and other kinds of accomplishments. Norman Sicily, as well as Norman England then, are extremely significant in what we call the High Middle Ages. And as well, Normans led in the Crusades of that era because they were very much individuals who refused to be held back. They kept their desire to travel and conquer despite Christianization and all the accoutrements of civilization. They still wanted to go. This is then the background for William. William the Conqueror, who was the heir to the ducal throne after a not inconsiderable time of trying to get control and also deal with issues not only with the King of France, because he did have a lord, he was the vassal technically of the King of France as Duke of Normandy. And he had neighbors who did not wish him well. The Count of Anjou, which, as some of you know, is just right down the road. Anjou and Normandy, and I called them neighbors. I didn't say friends. You can't do much about your neighbors. You can, you choose your friends, but your neighbors are just there. But that's Normandy, a beautiful, beautiful part of France. I know, tree number 3. Because let's go all the way down, and there is, you see Emma, line 2, and I just wanted you to be aware as you see that you see that she had the 2 husbands, and then she had children by both spouses. The spellings, and I'm told even some of the information may not be totally accurate, but enough of it that we get the idea that Harold has his children. Like you see Harold Godwinson there, and you see Edith, and you see on the end Tostig, and that's not everybody, but I guess it's as much as they could get on the map. Now you see there's William over there. That's our William the Conqueror. And next to him is his brother Odo. Odo's a very interesting character. Odo was a bishop in name, and we will have occasion to meet him very soon, but I just wanted you to notice Odo because he will be part of the Norman family clan. But there's cousin Emma. Emma is also, you see, William's cousin. And that is the connection. And you'll say, well, that's not a strong connection. It'll do when we need to bring up the issue of family. If you got questions, you say, check the chart. You know, I'm not going over it with you. You know, it's like, I've got this fleet out here. I've got all these soldiers. I've got all these horses. If the family tree doesn't convince you, I think this will. But that's first cousins once removed, I think, is about the way that this is described, because you see that Emma is related to William's grandfather and father as well. Meanwhile, as far as I'm aware, Emma was still living, but I suspect she was very quiet at this time, because I suspect she had friends on both sides and wanted to stay alive. So I'm thinking that it would not have been a good idea. When William the Conqueror, who had not been King of England, Duke of Normandy all that long, proclaimed his right to be king, he said, well, you know, the reason I'm going to be king is not because I want it. It's because Cousin Eddie wanted me to be king. He begged me. Some years back, I was there for a family reunion, and he said, if you're available, I would love to have you as next king of England. And so they said, you got witnesses? You called me a liar? You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, these folks did not, negotiate or say, yeah, just a misunderstanding. But in fact, there was more. The claim was that Harold had actually been on the continent, gotten in some kind of dispute. William had saved him. And then he made an oath to William, recognizing William as the true heir to the throne. So, if you go back on that now, you know what you are. P. Perjurer. You swore before God that I was the successor, and now you've taken the throne. Yes, you're a perjurer, and you know what else you are? A usurper. You are a pretty low individual. This is a supposed fanciful drawing of Harold doing the oath to William, promising him. And therefore, you see, when we Normans go into England, we're not doing it opportunists or aggressors. We're doing it because it's right. Because the person who's king is a liar. A damn liar. Yes, and yeah, I'm using some strong language because, I mean, hey, we're Catholics here, and we need to understand the seriousness of these deeds. So, see, we've even got the monk there, and look at that seat, what he's got his right hand on. So that's some serious business. That's probably the host right there. So, this is going to be serious. And all of this is going on in 1066. Big year, huh? This is like, just don't. Everybody's watching to see what's going to happen, I guess, at this point. Now, let me bring back someone some of you will remember either fondly or not so fondly. This is Hildebrand, Gregory VII. Now, you'll notice he became Pope in 1073. But even before Gregory became Pope, he was the power behind the throne, chief advisor of the other popes. He was the one who basically gave them the ideas. William, there in Normandy, sends emissaries to Rome and says, that situation in England is terrible. I am just, as a good Christian duke, I am horrified nay, aghast at what is going on in the English church. Stiggon is a liar, a cheat, and a pluralist. I mean, not necessarily in that order. He's just awful. And as a man of the Lord, I want to go to England and do some crusading. Well, of course, he said, yeah, we'll take that to the boss and see what reaction. Well, the pre-Gregorian church in the 1060s was definitely on a reform drive. They thought of William as being similarly minded. And the story goes that they agreed to provide him with certain support because they wanted Stiggon deposed and to get an appropriate pontiff and archbishop, that is, into office. A person who would begin a reform program, no more wives for the priests and all the rest of it. Got that reform. So, it isn't going to happen as long as Stiggon and company is around. So, what are you going to get in your pope bag? Because you're going to get all kinds of, you get a banner to fly on your ship. It says, Peter loves you, or that kind of thing. So it's going to be a St. Peter flag, and you'll have relics. All kinds of goodies to show that you're not just going by yourself. You are going to save England from a despotic and evil so-called king. Again, I warned you when I started that some pretty nasty things would be said about poor Harold, and this is what happens. I mean, get overwhelmed by the Norman propaganda machine, and that's what's happened here. This is the whole thing that they were pulling at, and it was very useful. I mean, I'm sure in England you're not going to have welcome Normans. I don't think there'd be a group of them out there. But for the purpose of attracting support, William did well to enjoy papal support. As a matter of fact, it's said that his entourage of military supporters would include people who were not Normans. I mean, they were from other places. I mean, I'm sure they were compensated if they lived that long, but, you know, I mean, I don't think you have to worry a lot about veterans' benefits in that case. But the idea is many of these non-Normans would definitely have been attracted by the idea of going on this sort of crusading venture to overthrow a godless usurper, if I may use that language. So, that is what was in mind. Ooh, another rough-looking one. And then there's Tostig, younger brother. Why do I think of Cain and Abel? It just goes on and on, doesn't it, of the brothers in history. In fact, we know that Tostig was Harold's younger brother. He ruled in Northumbria. His thanes, his subjects felt that he was not a good ruler of Northumbria, and when apparently Harold agreed that his own brother was not fit to be the earl, of course Tostig didn't say, oh, well, let me help you down here in Wessex then, and I'll try to learn from you. You're such a wonderful brother. No, he said, I want vengeance. So, let's talk to the folks up in Norway, because maybe I could help them. He becomes an ally. I'd say he doesn't have his nice looking a beard. His is just a bunch of stub. But Tostig is on his way to looking fierce, I guess. Doesn't look like Harold Hardrada, but he basically is going to collaborate with Harold Hardrada with sort of on-ground support. When all your ships come from the north, we will be out here and going, welcome to our land. And you understand the route would lead these folks into what had been his territory as Earl, so he is prepared, I guess, with the forces he can get to add them to Hardrada's forces and hope that King Harold's forces are not yet there. So that's Tostig. And of course, all this is leading to the great events, one of the great days in English military history. Yeah, I guess it's the last one. This is in September. You say, wow, I feel like blowing taps, because, this is a great, great moment for the English. Harold leads his forces all the way north in a Stamford Bridge, it's called. And these forces, meeting, of course, Harold Hardrada's forces have come off the ships, joining together with those of Tostig. And after what was apparently quite a battle, according to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, King Harold will prevail. His own brother dies. The Norwegian king dies. Most of Harold Hardrada's men die. As a matter of fact, they speak of very few of the Norwegian ships will have anybody to carry home because, so many of them are dead. So it's a total English victory, if you want to look at it that way. And I think it is quite significant to bear that in mind, because I think sometimes we forget that. Late September, way up north in Northumbria, where that battle takes place. And then there's Hastings. Now, you can get on a train or a coach, I guess they would say, and you'd have a nice little ride. But think about marching. Yeah. It's just not that appealing. And I wonder how those Roman roads were working out for them by the 11th century, The maintenance crews were out there, all those English engineers helping to add lanes. No, I don't think so. I think this would have been a very, very difficult route. But Harold decided with his forces, when he learned that the other enemy had arrived, would now meet them. So, in a few days, the English forces had arrived in lovely Hastings. Now, it is significant, just to get the historical record straight, that was not their original place of landing, but it was close by. Have many of you been to Hastings? It's a nice little town. Oh, it's not a little town, but it's a pleasant little town by the seashore. And of course, you know, when they see the sun, they just throw off their shirts and run out, and they get really excited because that's the closest there, I guess, to some sunny place. The shore is mostly rocks, but for our ideas of beach, there's not much of it. But nevertheless, Hastings is a lovely little community, and thanks to American plutocrats back in the 20s and 30s, like the Rockefellers, invested quite a bit of money there to save all these spots for the sake of history. The Anglo-American connection was very big back then, and so these people with lots of money and perhaps a guilty conscience decided to spend some of it on the preservation of some of these very interesting English historic sites. I just happened to look at all the placards when I was there in Hastings, and I was interested to see the name of Rockefeller there and think about why. And again, it's obvious. They felt that this was significant in American history as well as that of England. 9 days. 9 days. And I'm thinking, what would you have been thinking, if you'd been like an ordinary little English fella and you'd gone from Stamford Bridge and spending the night in all of these places and thinking, wow, I wonder what it'll be like meeting those old Normans. I bet those are mean folks. That kind of thing. I mean, it had to have been a terrific strain. And it's not like they're getting any R&R. That 9 days is all about the march, okay? So nobody's saying, now you fellas, just take it easy. You can stay at the barracks somewhere and maybe meet some people, and maybe have a drink. No. This is a march because Harold had decided this is it. We're going to get them, and we're going to get them now. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. No waiting. And some have criticized Harold for not waiting until he'd had the opportunity to get more forces, because he left a lot of his forces up there, just decided I have to do this now. So he recruited new forces, got them, and he said, we're going to go do it, and we're going to do it now, ASAP, as we say now. So it was a very, very difficult situation, and William and his forces were ready. The day of Saturday, October 14th, was the day it was said that the Norman forces would fight in a way that no one could believe, that the English did not prevail. This was no easy victory for the Normans. And that's to say to you that the English deserve an amazing amount of credit considering what they had just been through up north. Ultimately, of course, the Normans did prevail. At the same time, however, it is true that for various reasons, part of it, of course, the use of the horses and other military innovations by Normans may well have brought about this defeat for the English. But whatever it was overwhelming, I am sure, to the remainder of the family of Harold, who, such as it was, Harold he was killed in the battle this time, and it does not appear that there will be some nice post-battle speech saying, well, we fought, but he was a great warrior and I admired him very much. No, none of that. He was the devil incarnate and may burn in hell forever, and that sort of thing. So William will have none of this, let's all get ecumenical. No, I am the ruler. I prevailed and I'm now king of England. So there's not going to be any of this. Well, your predecessor was King Harold. Oh, I think that would create a little temper tantrum. I don't think we bring up that name anymore. It's just like, Harold who? It's just like, yeah, he is no longer with us. He is in the flames. And I don't mean those. I mean those below. Until December, and you got to give the Wittton some credit there. Apparently, Edward the Confessor may have had, I think it was nephews, who had actually lived in Hungary, long story. But they were holding out possibly for one of them. And you see why it took him from October to December to get recognized. And I just imagine he and his Norman entourage were getting a little impatient. I want to be crowned, and I want to be crowned now. So you English, get your act together. And that, of course, will not happen until he takes London. So that they will hold out against him, which is kind of interesting. And we know a lot about this, in fact, because have any of you been to Bayeux? You saw it's a beautiful city, isn't it? The Bayeux Tapestry, one of the greatest works. You'll notice I left myself a little breathing room by saying either the Queen or the King's brother, because theories are divided. Some say Matilda, William's wife, had nuns do this work. Others claim it was Odo the bishop. The incredible, I can't imagine how something like that is done. You may have even seen the little fold-outs that have the whole tapestry and all the parts of it. But it must have been worked on for quite a long time to create this kind of magnificent piece. And yes, commemorative dishes and all. I am sure if you get to the Bayeux gift shop, you can get T-shirts, postcards, whatever the heart desires in terms of Bayeux memorabilia, because this tapestry was amazing to think that it could have been preserved and recognized all these years later. Notice it was discovered in the 15th century. Didn't even know it was there. Just stored away somewhere and say, look at this old thing. Oh, I know what this is. That's a famous battle. That kind of thing. And then you just never know what might be there. But as they say, people who know say, it's not really a tapestry, but it's in fact an embroidery. And so those of you with more knowledge than I will know the difference, and you're aware that great skill was utilized in the creation of this marvelous work. And they go through the whole scene there, the old Harold being crowned by the loser, Stigand, Archbishop of Canterbury. So, two losers together, now burning in hell. Okay, so, and I can say that because, the Battle of Hastings, I think, pretty much revealed the will of the Lord. And as a result, William is now king. And I think, Stigand, you're not going to be Archbishop of Canterbury anymore. And guess what? No pension. So, the Normans have come to town, and we've got a whole new program for you. This is a two-part lecture, and so I'm going to pick it up there next week. And so we'll be able to find out about all the love and caring that William will show to his new English friends. Thank you. Thanks.